See you. Thank you. This week we are now ready to start. We are at Shabbos Parshas Korach. Korach is a very critical Parsha. We have a statement regarding Korach in this week's Parsha, which it says, "Velo yeh keKorach bechol hadoso." A person is told, especially, not to be like Korach. Not in every situation, as difficult the situations were, we are told, don't be like them. It's enough that we know that the story is not a good story. And every person can personally learn that this is not who you want to follow, this is not how you want to be, etc. Specifically, when it comes to Korach, what the Torah says, "Velo yeh keKorach," you should not be like Korach. It seems that Korach is a very extreme, difficult situation, which we are told specifically not to be like him, not to imitate him. What was the main issue of Korach? Korach's issue was mainly called jealousy, envy. He was jealous. He was jealous on his cousin Moshe. He was jealous on his cousin Aaron. He was jealous that somehow the same age children growing up at the same grandmother, visiting the same family celebrations and birthday parties. So somehow some made it into such great accomplishments. One of them became the leader of the people, the Rabbi, the Rebbe, the ultimate president in charge and all, the Nasi. And yet the other one is now called the high priest, Kohen Gadol, the one who is the greatest of all men, and the one who is in charge on all the service in the Mishkan, in the Bet HaMikdash, in the temple. And what is he? Even though he was also involved in greatness, but still not as great as his cousins. So he got very upset. And the upset was expressed by his jealousy, motivated by his jealousy. So I want to take tonight some time to talk a little bit about jealousy and to see how do you deal with jealousy and what do we do about jealousy. Jealousy is a very interesting phenomenon. In one end, we have a statement in Pirkei Avot, the famous Mishnah, which is known as the Ethics of Our Fathers, a tractate of Mishnah that we have the tradition and custom to study throughout the summer. Every single Shabbat, we learn one chapter of it. And by the end of the summer, we repeated Pirkei Avot probably 4 to 5 times. And there is a Mishnah there, which reads as follows: Hakin'ah, which means in English, in Hebrew, jealousy. Atava, lust and desire. Akavod, seeking honor. Motzi'im et Adam min haolam. It drives a person out of this world. That's the story. A person who is jealous looks on everything as a deficiency in him and by him. He says, look what the other person has, and I don't. And if I don't have it, it makes me feel really upset and really low on myself. This is what jealousy is. Why should he get and I don't? So ultimately, it drives you out of this world because you can't get along with anyone. People don't like to spend time with you because you are a jealous person. Who wants to spend time and who wants to be a colleague of a jealous person? Yet, in the other end, we have a statement by the very same sages. Our Talmudic sages would say, Kinat sofrim tarbe chokhmah. the jealousy of scholars, the envy which one scholar has to the other, thinking, look at him, look how great he is, look how much he learned, look how much he knows. This is actually a tool to enhance one's wisdom. If you want to become wiser, be jealous on those who know more than you, more than those who study better than you, and you will become even a better person than you are. To the point that it's even brought down in Jewish law, an interesting, very interesting legality, which has to do with competition. Usually, we obviously allow free competition in order to benefit the consumer. But sometimes competition is not accepted, especially if the competition would be to create a clientele of the very same person who had worked hard to establish that clientele. And you cutting off his livelihood by coming and competing right by him next door. And there is a lot of laws in Judaism in regard to competition. This is not just a topic which is being dealt in court. It is like everything else in the world that's being dealt by the Torah, by our sages, in the Talmud, in much great detail, discussing this issue of competition. And yet, in the very same subject of competition in the Talmud, which, by the way, it is called Tractate Baba Batra, in the second chapter of that tractate, the Talmud tells us that if somebody comes and opens a school next door to somebody else's existing school, is not considered a competitive, meaning it is kosher to do it. Why is it kosher? Somebody just got a few children into his school and you're coming to kind of cut him off his livelihood by opening a school next door, which might attract some of his kids. The answer is because we are considering the benefit of the consumer. In this scenario, it means that we are looking for the benefit of the children. And the children will learn better, perhaps, when they have another option of somebody who might be a better teacher, somebody who might be more scholarly, somebody who might be more patient. So if you are considering the benefit of the consumer in this case is expecting to give him a chance to learn better than he has learned till now. That is where competition becomes kosher. Imagine somebody has a shoe store and they're selling shoes for $200 a pair of shoes. And the next door, a person comes next door, opens a shoe store, same pair of shoes, and is making it and bringing it from a valid source, and he's paying his taxes. It's not like that he's cutting the market short. He's doing all the legal requirements to run a proper business, but he's offering the same shoes for $50 less. Then the benefit of the consumer is that we have to allow the second person to open his store. Why should people pay $200 if they can pay $150 for the same pair of shoes? What was that? Okay. So that is the idea which is applying also here in regard to children. When it comes to children, we want to have the children, not sure, there's some type of noise.
It's a woodpecker, Rabbi. He's on your house.
Oh, woodpecker on my house? Why making such noise?
Yes.
He's come to listen to the shiur.
I hope he leaves soon, because if he stays there overnight, I'm in trouble. I'm coming to sleep by you guys. Anyway, so what happens is that since we have children, and the children are the ones who are children are the ones who need to study. The fact that they need to study, we have to allow them the opportunity to study. And the opportunity to study would be when there is another teacher who decides that he wants to come and join. That's the name of the game. There is going to be jealousy. Kids are going to say, look, the other teacher has better tools and it teaches nicer and greater. The answer is we are actually supporting the jealousy. We are interested in the jealousy. It's very welcomed. But make up your mind. Is jealousy okay or jealousy is not okay? How does it work with jealousy? And the answer is very simple. Like everything else in those which we consider personality traits, there is no good trait and bad trait. It is the trait which is being utilized for a good purpose, and then it's kosher. And then there is the same trait which is being utilized for a negative purpose, then it becomes non-kosher, it becomes treif. Which means, in other words, if you are motivated by your jealousy to do more and to study more and to expect of yourself more, then it's kosher. But the moment that jealousy takes you to a place of darkness, that you look at yourself and you say, look what this guy have, and I can never have what this guy have, and therefore I'm not doing anything with my life, then you know that this extreme impact of jealousy is not kosher, it's treif. Why am I mentioning it? Because you can have a question that many commentators are asking this question. Korach was kosher or not kosher? What do you mean, was he kosher or not kosher? The fact that we see that he was swallowed in the ground obviously proves you that he wasn't kosher. So what kind of question is it? Was he kosher or not kosher? The question is as follows. We have a general rule that if something or a person who is very not kosher or not good, we try to avoid mentioning his name. We don't like to mention names of those kinds of people and personalities which are not good, which are not kosher. There is a very interesting statement in the Talmud. The Talmud says that just like there is a verse which says, Zecher Tzadik Livracha, the remembrance of a tzaddik is a blessing, meaning when you mention a righteous name, it is becoming a source of blessing for you. The fact that you remember him and you mention him. So too, says King Solomon in Proverbs, Shem Reshaim Yirkav. The name of the wicked shall rat. How can I name rat? The way I named rat is by not mentioning it, by not calling that name. And as less you're calling it, eventually the name gets forgotten. And that's called a name which rats. So there is a name which is a source for blessing, and yet there is a name which has the chance to rat. And the Talmud tells us about certain people who did certain things which we do not like to mention them by name as a consequence for those things that they did, for those bad things that they did. And yet, we have an entire portion in Torah, this week's Torah portion, that the name of the Parsha is Korach. And anybody who asks, who was Korach? Shtota koya Korach. What are you going to say? Korach is an individual who was jealous and he was fighting and he created a whole revolt against Moses and his family. How can we have this kind of Parsha that an entire Parsha in Torah shall be named after a wicked man like Korach. What's the answer? He was jealous. So just because he was jealous means that jealousy is bad. So how do we, in the other end, mention that jealousy is good when it comes to competition? We also know that in the Torah it says, for example, that there were the two sisters, Rachel and Leah, which were the wives of Jacob. Leah was blessed with children. Rachel at first did not have any children. So the Torah says, Vatekane Rachel be'achoso. Rachel was jealous about her sisters, about her sister. Rachel is the symbol of humility. Rachel was the most humble person. She gave her sister the secrets in order to sustain her marriage. Rachel was an ultimate righteous woman, and yet the Torah writes very clearly that she was envy, she was jealous of Leah. How was she jealous? Rashi actually tells us that the reason she was jealous was not jealous for the fact that Leah had a child and she didn't. It's like sometimes a person is jealous on someone's accomplishment and he says, oh, I'm so jealous, I wish the other person would have nothing. No, she was happy for what Leah had. But the jealousy was, Rashi says, that when Rachel saw that her sister has children and she does not, she took it as a sign that it must be that her sister is a better person than her. So she was jealous on her sister's good deeds, and her sister's main great accomplishments, which gave her the opportunity to have children. That is, and that was the jealousy of Rachel to Leah. That's what Rashi says. Which means she admired her accomplishments and she was jealous, saying, I wish I can have the same accomplishments. And this is really the point. The point is to be jealous when somebody is good, to be jealous about somebody who has accomplishments is kosher 100%. Because what it means is that you're telling yourself, I wish I can be and do what that person does, or what that person is. I would like to be like him. That's in general the story, and there is many stories like this. Especially I know stories of great Hasidim who had birth and as growing up, they were very simple people. Not simple because they didn't have the education. They were simple because even they had educators, somehow they were born seemingly with such poor conditions of accomplishment that they couldn't become anything other than being very simple. And yet, at some point in life, those very people completely transformed, completely changed. And they became people of tremendous accomplishment, even in the world which was originally seemed to be a foreign world for them. A person who was never learned it. And not because he didn't want. He wanted, he cried, he prayed. But, he was born with a head which couldn't comprehend. Something was blocked. And suddenly you realize that that person has changed. You see him 20 years later, and he suddenly get to know him. He's an author, he's a speaker, he's a teacher. And I tried to find out, so what happened? At which point was the transformation? At which point was the change? It was very simple. He saw another young man, much younger than him, learn it, and he became so highly jealous on the person. Why does that person able to push himself to know and to understand, and I don't? And that jealousy gave him the push to say, that's it. I'm going to break my head. I'm going to put the effort. I'm going to look into the proper institutions and information so I can change and become something else. He believed in himself, but believing in himself is not enough. He needed some very strong inspiration. And the inspiration came about by jealousy, by looking at somebody and saying, "Oh, he did it. I think I should be able to do it too. I want to be like him." There's a Hasidic story about the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe. His name was Reb Sholem Dovber. He had a brother which was older than him, which his name was Zalman Aaron. So this is Reb Zalman Aaron and Sholem Dovber, who they were both the sons of the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe, Reb Shmuel. Happens to be that the second child, Sholem Dovber, which later became the Rebbe, was taller than his oldest brother, which happens sometimes in a family, that you can have a younger sibling is taller physically than the child who is older than them. And he wasn't too happy about it. He wasn't happy the fact that his younger brother is taller than him. So one time they were outside in the courtyard. So the older brother, as a child, was digging a pit in the yard, and he tells his brother, "Shalom, here, go into the pit. Stand up in the pit." Shalom stands into the pit, which is now meaning he's a foot or two deeper into the ground. So his brother Zalman stands at the surface of the pit, and he looks down and he says, "You see, I am taller than you." The mother, her name was Rebbetzin Rivka. She was the wife of the fourth Rebbe of Shmuel's wife, kind of watched the game of the two of her children, and she noticed what happened over here, the way Zalman Aaron put the taller brother who is younger in the pit and now claimed to be taller. So she turned to her son Zalman Aaron and she says, "Come here, my son. I want to teach you something. If you want to become taller than somebody who is taller than you don't have to take that person and put them down into the grave. You don't have to lower him. You can position yourself on a high stone, on a beam, and you are going to be taller." Which is saying basically to him, you want to become higher and taller, you can make yourself higher and taller. It doesn't necessarily have to become by putting the other person down, by pressing down on it. Put yourself on a higher step stool and you are going to be higher. Which is also interesting, and I always find it fascinating. As a mother, she could have called her son and say, Zalman, his name, Zalman Aaron. You know what you just did? This is called being jealous. And you know that being jealous is such a bad trait. This is not the way kids behave. This is the way bad people behave. This is the way Korach behaved. Give him a whole speech, give him a hairful about jealousy. I'm sure as a Yiddish mama, she had plenty to tell him and how to correct him regarding his behavior. But instead, she's not rebuking him for his jealous act, but rather what she tells him is, let me teach you how you can utilize your jealousy, how you can direct your jealousy into the right direction. You are jealous. That's the trait you got. Okay, let's use it. How are you going to use it? Make yourself stronger and better and greater than the person that you are jealous of. Stand up on a step stool and you are going to be taller than them. You don't have to dig a pit and put and lower that person down. This is basically what the Torah is teaching us here regarding Korach. We wondered before, why is there a whole Parsha named after Korach? Such a man who rebelled against Moshe, a man of jealousy. The answer is, what Korach wanted was 100% kosher. What did he want? He wanted to become a high priest. He wanted to be involved in temple service. What's wrong with that? Even Moses told them as a response, you think I don't want to become a high priest? I want to become too. Moses was jealous. Yes, to become someone who is involved in a world of godly service is something to envy, something to be jealous of. And it's very properly okay to want it and to desire it and to call for it and to demand it and to be jealous on the one who has it and to want it to have it too. All this is kosher. The moment you realize that God wants him, but not you, and you go and you act against it, that is when it becomes not kosher. You realize that this is what Hashem wants. Don't interfere. Say, I'm jealous. I would like to be what he is, but this is not my task in life. This is not my purpose. Hashem has chosen somebody else, and you move on. That is the core issue with Korach. You know why the Parsha is named Korach? Because the Parsha teaches us the wonderful, positive quality, which is called jealousy. It's okay to be jealous. It's not okay to act on it when there is a clear direction that this is not something for you, or if you don't have the means to afford it. That's the point of Korach. I'm going to make a brocha a second. It's back to the winter days. I'm taking a tea. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakel v'yivdorei. L'chaim, l'chaim. Today is also the first day of the new month called the month of Tammuz. Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. The birth of the new moon is today. When there is a new moon, there is a new month. That's how the Jewish calendar works. The beginning of a month is not random. The beginning of a month is associated with an appearance of a new moon, a change in the world where it's still this point to a new phenomenon, a new moon, the month of Tammuz. Obviously, the month of Tammuz, like every month, has special holidays. In this month, on the so-called Hasidic calendar, two major events, radical major events happened on this new month's calendar. One happened on the 12th day in the month of Tammuz, 1927. 1927, it was a few weeks earlier that the previous Lubavitcher Rabbi, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchok Schneerson, was arrested from his apartment in Leningrad, today modern-day St. Petersburg, and he was taken to prison and was immediately judged and sentenced to death penalty. And obviously the reason was because he's called a contre-revolutionnaire. What is a counter-revolutionary? It means that it's somebody who is fighting the government. How was he fighting the government? He did not run a party against a government party, but he was committed to Torah. He was committed to preserve Jewish education, send many of his followers to open and to sustain schools, cheders, yeshivot, underground mikvahs, and he was fighting in a way by declaring that according to even the law in Russia, it's okay to study. This is an interpretation which is wrongly interpreted. And obviously, he was in a very, very difficult situation. The whole world was trembling. If God forbid the Rebbe's life will be taken by those wicked communists. To make a long story short, it came the 12th of, it was after being sentenced to death. A couple hours later, it was changed to a sentence to exile to a faraway town called Kostroma, where he was meant to be the first in Siberia, then in Kostroma, meant to be the 10 years. The previous Rebbe was taken on a train from Spalerka, which is the prison in St. Petersburg, and they drove for a long way into the city of Kostroma. In Kostroma, it did not take more than a week or two when he received the news that he is free to go with the condition that he cannot stay in Russia anymore. He had to leave Russia, which for the previous Rebbe to leave Russia was very difficult. He had all his followers there, and he had to keep up the underground army of Hasidic teachers and scholars. But it was a life or death situation, and he was left jail on this month, the 12th of Tammuz, and he went first to Riga in Latvia, then to Warsaw in Poland, and eventually came 1940 in March, he came to the United States of America. When he was freed of jail at the 12th of Tammuz, he actually wrote a letter, a very famous letter that we have today, and it's printed, where he writes that this redemption is not only personal. He looked at it that this was a liberation of the Jewish people. We were able to stand strong and to show the world that we are standing up for our rights to be Jewish. So he considered it a geula, a real exodus and celebration for everybody. For everybody. There's a famous declaration that is printed, and I heard it also from my wife's grandfather who was there standing, and he heard it from the Rabbi saying it. When he said to the entire large group of people which came to the Vokzal, to the train station, to say him goodbye and to see the Rebbe going to exile, he said, I want you to know, even though he was chained on his feet and on his hands, and he says, Jewish people, I want you to remember that only our bodies are sent to exile. Regarding to our souls, there is no exile imposed on our soul. No one can dominate our souls. No one can imprison our souls. Our soul is free, who can do and should do what Hashem wants us to do. That's how he said goodbye from his fellow Hasidim. So the 12th of Tammuz, for many, many years, is considered till today a celebration of liberation, the liberation of the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. And just like Purim, you have one day of celebration, and the entire month gets transformed into a day of joy. Same thing is the 12th of Tammuz. You have a date. The date is a date, one single day. But the fact that this is a day which celebrates the liberation makes this month to be a month that we are to experience and to celebrate and to enjoy the simcha of the Rebbe being free, enabling to continue his holy work to the point where he came to the shores of the United States in 1940. And 10 years did he live here. And those 10 years, he planted many, many seeds by establishing the institutions of Chabad, which are flourishing and functioning and involved in life, in Jewish life in particular, everywhere in the world, all came from this day of the liberation, the 12th of Tammuz, because it really could have been different. He actually wrote a diary of his day in jail. The diary is also in English, if you want to read it. We have it in the library, I believe, in the Torah Center. And in the diary, it talks about the tremendous difficulties and physical challenges that he had gone through, both first in jail and then in exile. But obviously, he stood strong and firm and very clear in his vision that he is there for every single Jew. So, Tammuz, a day of liberation. Move and press forward. 1994. 1994, in the third day of this coming month, the new month that we are celebrating today, the month of Tammuz. 1994, in Brooklyn, New York, on Saturday night, the 3rd of Tammuz, our dear Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, after being in a 2-year, after suffering a stroke 2 years earlier, had passed on Saturday night, the 3rd of Tammuz. You can imagine the 3rd of Tammuz, the day of the Rebbe's passing, was a very, very, very sad, bitter, confusing, you name it. I don't have so much word in my word treasure to describe to you the sorrow and the pain and the difficulty to deal with a day like Gimel Tammuz. I can tell you personally, I was at that day in Buenos Aires, Argentina. My brother Usher, the brother which is 1 year younger than me, got married that Thursday night, the 2nd of Tammuz. Today actually is his 28th anniversary. That was 28 years ago. He got married on Thursday. Now we are on Shabbos. Even though on Shabbos we got noticed from the hospital from New York, we got information, different people brought information that the Rebbe is really not doing well. But at the same time, there was a lot of people at this Shabbat after the wedding. I can tell you and promise you, no one had one single thought that this might lead to the physical end. Literally, we were singing, we were davening, we were celebrating, we were all joining in this birthday celebration, in the Rebbe's, in Shabbos, in the wedding celebration, as if it can never happen. Because this really was the outlook. This really was the reality in our lives, in our mind and heart. It's not going to happen. The Rebbe is staying with us. Somehow a miracle is going to have to occur. Some good doctor is going to find a remedy which is going to make hocus pocus into bringing back, the brain into functioning properly and the heart to function properly. We didn't want to accept. We didn't want to believe. It's not important now to get into the philosophy, but this was the bottom line. And then came the news. It was Saturday night in New York when it was very clear, when they announced Baruch Dayan Emet, blessed be the true judge, the blessing that you say when somebody passes on, a relative, a friend, someone in your midst. We tried every which way to get from Argentina to New York. We wanted to be at the funeral, knowing that the funeral is going to take place that very same Sunday. Very difficult. in Argentina, when it comes to flying, believe me, it is a real third world country. I was there 5 to 6 times. You don't want to get stuck there. It's always something going on there with the planes, with the strike. They keep on striking, another strike, another strike. There was always strikes. Anyway, they did not come to the funeral. I came the day later, and now we are facing reality. The reality is, where are we going from here? Where are we heading from here? There was never a plan. The plan was that we are going to continue life with our Rebbe. And the Rebbe kept on speaking about that it's time to make the world ready to welcome Mashiach. And Mashiach is going to come. And we're going to go into this new era which all our prophets prophesied about. All our teachers told us about. All Jews of millions of people lived and died, all with the hope to see it taking place. One of our principles of Jewish belief, the coming of Mashiach. And the Rebbe kept on talking about it, that it's happening and it's happening. And lo and behold, that's it. It's all over. It was difficult. I must be honest, it was very difficult. But at the same time, I can tell you, there wasn't a doubt in our mind, in my mind, in my wife's mind. There was no doubt that we are not going to stop the lifestyle which the Rebbe encouraged us, taught us to live by. We're going to close the shade over here. Getting a little too. The sun decided to come in for a change. Okay, that was the plan. We are not changing. We are going to have to deal with the tragedy, with the loss, but there's absolute no consideration for change. We got married with the plan that we are going to be shluchim, meaning that we are going to be involved in the outreach work of Chabad, whatever the Rebbe would have sent us or would have agreed for us to go. Now that physically we can't be sent by him, we will still continue doing it. And that's how that very same summer, the Rebbe passed away in July, and we were here in Seattle on August, 2 months later, also the same summer, 1994, with the plans to come and open a Chabad in the city, the holy city of Bellevue, Washington, which that's who we came. What's the point of the story? The point of the story is that when we consider the month of Tammuz, in one end being such a celebration, 1927 in Russia, and then to be such a tragedy and a loss in a day of mourning, 1994 in America, you realize that really it's all leading to the same cause. It's all working out perfectly and exactly the way things were meant to be. What's the biggest proof? The biggest proof is that the previous Rebbe left Russia, he came to America. And like I said before, by him coming in this world, he became a place, and he was developing a program which gave Jews in America and from America all over the world the opportunity to connect with their Jewishness, which he would not be able to do under the Iron Curtain in Russia. It would have never happened. Besides that, looking now 28 years later, after this unforgettable, difficult Shabbos night when the Rebbe passed away, 28 years later, and the vision and the legacy and the life of the Rebbe was speaking for 40 years since he became the Rebbe in 1950, is clearly reaching places and levels which was never experienced and never in anyone's imagination would have even be something to consider, something on anyone's mind. the young men and women who are moving out into forsaken communities just to find one Jew or another. I want to tell you, I got a call last week. I'm looking on the telephone now trying to remember the city I got the call from. A young man calls me. His last name is actually Morozov. Now I have a brother by the name Morozov. They are related. He calls me from a cell phone number, area code 7747-157-0997. You can try to Google it. Where is 747? Some forsaken city in the country of Kazakhstan. I can't even pronounce it. I don't know where it is. This is the guy. If you want to see his picture, his name is Mordechai, like my name, Morozov. I say, where do you live? He said, I live an hour away from Tashkent, a couple hours away from Almaty. You know what Tashkent is? Tashkent is Uzbekistan. Almaty is Kazakhstan. And he is somewhere in a small town between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. And what do you do there? He said, I'm serving the Jewish community. How many Jews live in your city? He said, about 200. 200 Jews. Where were you born? I asked him. I was born in Melbourne, Australia. And where's your wife from? Winnipeg, Canada. I says, you are from Melbourne, Australia. Your wife is from Winnipeg, Canada. I'm sure you never spoke any Russian. He says, no. How did you end up in this forsaken city, and I can't recall the name, between Tashkent, between Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan? He said, what kind of question is that? I got married a few years ago, and I asked the office, is there a community which needs someone to work, have Jews, but have no rabbi to work with them? So someone said, yeah, in Kazakhstan. Next thing I went, okay, I'm going to Kazakhstan. And this is where they positioned me. Young man. I asked them last week on the call, he called me about a question he had in Jewish law. I asked them, how do you city impacted by the latest situation between Russia and Ukraine? Tells me, no, not so bad. I mean, the only thing we don't have now is sugar. We used to get sugar from Russia, now we can't get it. I say, you don't have sugar? Like, it's like here in America, without sugar, America would be burned down. What do you mean no sugar? We need sugar in our cereal. We need sugar in our cholent. We need sugar in everybody needs sugar. Anyway, what's the point of this story? Thinking to myself, every question I asked him, he said, don't worry. We have the Rebbe's blessings. I'm here. I'm very happy to be a part of this mission. And really, really, this inspired me a lot, because when you think 28 years after the Rebbe's passing, and you wonder what I felt 28 years ago, I wasn't thinking how the world's going to look 28 years later. In my mind, at that point, the Rebbe left for a little bit, is coming straight back, another week, another month. This is not going to take 28 years. Unfortunately, it did take 28 years, and I can't say that we live in a better world than 28 years earlier. I'm not so sure about it. I'm going to leave it for another time. But one thing is, if you want to look positively, that when you can leave this world and at the same time leave a legacy which is completely and entirely built on the concept that every person can and should want to become more than what he is and what he thinks he is. Empowering young men and women that they can turn over countries, they can build centers, they can leave them alone in a Kazakhstanian small town and not be affected by the challenges, to be far away from any Jewish population, to feel strong Jewish and to feel happy on their mission. This is very, very unusual. I don't think that in the history of Jewish people did we have such a leader as we had the merit to be inspired by the leadership of our great Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, which is Yortzeit, comes up this Shabbos. So what I want to conclude is I'm going to go to New York like I always go for the Rebbe's Yortzeit. Obviously, I always mention in my notes that I write for the Rebbe, I always ask a special blessing for those who participate in the classes. I say our supporters, they need a blessing, but I always ask a bracha for the good health and well-being of the men and women who are participating in our classes here on the East Side Torah Center with Chabad in Bellevue. So obviously I'm going to have everybody in mind, but I also want to encourage you, each and every one here of the listeners, to take this opportunity of this weekend, Shabbat weekend, the Rebbe's Yortzeit, to reflect on the life of the Rebbe. You can read about it on Chabad.org. You can hear stories. You can learn his wisdom. There is so many places that you can watch a video, not on Shabbat, but you can watch on YouTube videos of the Rebbe's Farbrengens and singing and inspiration. And you can hear people, great personalities, who talk about how the Rebbe impacted their life. The next few days, instead of watching the garbage of this hearing in Washington, or this Meshugas or that Meshugas, you have an opportunity to be inspired by this 28th Yortzeit, which is coming of the Shabbos, and may Hashem help us that we should be able to use this inspiration and the important everlasting life lessons to live a good life, a meaningful life, and the Rebbe's ultimate wish that the world should come to a place where we're going to have only goodness and kindness, as Maimonides describes the era of the future redemption, that we should be materialized and actualized speedily in our days. Amen, amen, amen. Thank you. L'chaim, l'chaim, Chodesh Tov, a good month, everybody, a healthy month, and a meaningful month, a month of redemption. L'chaim.
L'chaim.
Oh, anybody wants to share something? Don't be bashful. Unmute you. We'll be happy to hear from you.
It's been a fascinating conversation, Rabbi, and you can take that to the bank because that was fascinating enough. I'm still not asleep. That's saying something. It's been a very long day.
I'm going to give you a very personal blessing that right after you leave this video, you should have a very, very good night's sleep.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Slava, how you doing, Slava?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
How do you enjoy the weather in Kirkland?
Very nice.
It reminds you December in Boston.
A little bit, yes. I was in Florida the whole winter, came from Florida here, and it got very cold here, and now it's nice.
I hope you will survive.
I hope I'll survive.
How long are you going to be staying here?
Full summer, till September, till Rosh Hashanah.
Nice.
I go to Boston to my family.
For those who are wondering who this Slava guy is, if you remember in our shul, we had a very famous, from the earliest people, the Mayor Danziger.
Yankel.
Remember Mayor? The Mayor was his uncle.
Yes.
Slava's uncle.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very good, everybody. David, are you still in Vancouver or are you back in home?
I am getting ready to leave.
You coming back to Bellevue?
No, I'm getting ready to go there.
Ah, you were here all week.
I've been here this week.
I didn't see you this morning, 7 o'clock.
Did you look all around?
I think so.
Are you sure I wasn't like the Phantom?
Maybe. The Phantom was there. You weren't there. Very good. Have a good month. Those who are available to come to synagogue tomorrow, 10 after 7, we're going to pray in honor of Rosh Chodesh, the new month. Shabbat Shalom. Chodesh Tov. We'll see you next
Have a
week.
good flight, Rabbi.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
And God bless you too.
У вас хороший месяц. Начался новый месяц. Знаете, какой? Как называется новый месяц?
Еще раз.
Как называется новый месяц? Знаете название месяца?
Тамуз?
Да, правильно.
Да.
Я думал, вы забыли. Помните, да?
Нет.